Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, HeartMath practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast. Today I want to talk to you about skillfully navigating change. Many of us go through life, myself included, clinging to the hope that everything will stay the same and the status quo will be maintained and friendships, everything just muddles along beautifully. And sometimes I think when life goes very smoothly, one should just be grateful for the smooth times, because invariably they don't last. And it's not always that it's something changes that's a bad change, but invariably the nature of our human existence is that things change. And what can be a big source of unhappiness for many people is the clinging to the hope that things won't change and then finding it very difficult when something does change, especially if it's a change that is out of your control, it's a change that's instigated by somebody else, and it's a change that you haven't chosen. I think that is the point that change is very difficult. We're going through some changes in my house at the moment, which is quite unwanted changes to do with my dogs. You were warned there would be dogs. We're episode 3. I'm talking about my dogs. And we have currently got 5 dogs. At the beginning of July, we had 6 dogs. And unfortunately, my eldest rescue dog, Dora, passed away. And I think in our losing Dora, our pack hierarchy has been disrupted. So my youngest dog, Ziggy, who's 3.5 and was my lockdown foster fail. So anybody who adopted a dog during lockdown can probably relate to the problems that come with a dog that was shut in the house for too long without outside contact. She has started to take the opportunity to have a go at our bulldog. And the bulldog is 11. She came into the relationship with the engineer. This poor engineer of mine arrived with 1 dog. When we met, I had 4, and then we've lost a few, we've gained a few. So his life was far simpler before he met me, poor man. And Ziggy has taken it upon herself to try to assert her authority. I don't know what she's doing with the bulldog. And I do not want dogs fighting in my house. I do not want to be living in a house where I have to separate dogs because they can't get along. So that isn't really an option. And what I have had to do in response to this unwanted behavior change that I've had with the dogs is start to change the way I deal with the dogs. Now, up till this point in time, it's all been a bit Montessori in the house here. They are effectively treated as our children. They have been allowed to do what they want. They have been allowed on the couch. They've been allowed on the beds. They are mollycoddled. And in order to correct this bad behavior that's happening, we've had to stop that. So Ziggy has lost all of her couch privileges. She's lost all of her bed privileges. And also, to keep it balanced, so has everybody else. So we've had to change the way we manage the dogs in the house. It isn't a change I wanted because I like sitting on the couch with the dogs in the evening. I like the dogs getting onto the bed in the morning. The engineer gets up quite early. As soon as he gets out of bed, the dogs would get onto the bed with me. And we've had to put a stop to all of that to make sure we really get this slight anarchy under control. It's been interesting for me to go through this because this is a change I don't want. However, the consequences of me not making this change are that I spend the whole time in a house being nervous about what my dogs are going to do. And I'm also not prepared to go through life like that either. I'm of the view that we have animals and dogs as companion animals that should enhance our lives, not make them more difficult. So in the long run, the changes I'm implementing now are for everybody's greater good, but it's confusing for the animals because they keep wanting to get onto the couch and then they're not quite sure why they're not allowed. It's meant extra work for us because every time someone tries to get on the couch, we have to calmly but firmly put them back onto their beds. And it really has kind of upset the whole apple cart and the dynamic in the house. Now, in the grand scheme of life, This is a real small blip on the change radar, but nevertheless, it is a change. And I wanted to just talk through the process I have to help me deal with things like this. And the first thing I've done with this is to accept that there is a problem here, and I have got to implement some different leadership style, dare I say. Goodness, I don't think I've been the dog's leader before. I've mostly been their friend that pays the rent for them and keeps their toy basket full. So I've had to change my leadership style with these dogs, and I've had to step into a management role with them, which is challenging for me. There's a part of me that feels bad. I feel sorry for them, and I have to get over that. So the first point here is I have had to accept that things have changed. And it's easier said than done, accepting change. I realize that, what I'm talking about, like I've said, it really isn't a great big deal. A change can come in so many forms, in the form of death, in the form of divorce, in the form of being fired from your job. And for me to say to you, you must just accept change, that's easier said than done with big scenarios like that. However, the fastest way to start to deal with and process change is to accept that things have changed. We make ourselves miserable because we fight what is. We make ourselves miserable when things change by kicking against the change. If you can find a way to make peace with the fact that there has been a change, it will help you move through the change process far quicker and far less traumatically. And there are multiple ways of doing that. You might have your own way of dealing with change. And again, it depends on the scale of the change. My change with the dogs, it's an irritation, but I know I have to do it and I just have to get on with it. And I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about whether it's fair or not. Partly this problem with the dogs has been created is my own fault for not having put more boundaries in place in the first place. I take responsibility for that. But there are various ways of going through change. Change brings up difficult feelings and difficult emotions, and they are the thing that makes change emotionally painful. If you can access a way to just sit with the feelings, and actually you have to just process through the feelings, the sooner you can get to that point of going, this is shit, I've got to work through it, the quicker you'll get out the other side of it. That might look like seeing a psychologist and talking through it with somebody. It might look like working through a coach. Depending on what kind of change you're going through, a coach can be really useful to help you navigate that process as well. It might look like sitting and journaling through the feelings that are coming up and what's happening for you. It might look like phoning a friend and having a rant on the phone with a friend just to process through stuff. But the important piece here is the processing through of the difficult feelings change brings up, so you can get to a point of acceptance. The second thing here is to take a step back and evaluate what's happened and have a look at what action steps you need to put into place to have a different outcome, or to be able to move out of the unwanted change and move forwards with life. So if we take, for instance, an unwanted change like getting divorced, there's a set of steps that have to be put in place for a divorce. You need to hire a lawyer, you need to go through the process of dividing assets, dissolving contracts and divvying everything up on a practical level. And on an emotional level, you need to process through the feelings that are happening with that. So I think something like that, it's so important to have the emotional support with that. And that would form part of that action plan of evaluating what's going on and what do I need to be able to get through and to the other side of this. The third thing is to acknowledge what you achieve and acknowledge how you grow in the process of things changing. And this is often something you'll do after you've come through a period of change. And I invite you, in listening to this, to have a think back to when there has been change in your life, and to have a look at what happened before the change and what happened now that you're past the change, and to have a look at what you learned as a result of that, how you grew as a person, and what the learnings are for you with that. A big part of being able to effectively navigate change is to have the emotional resilience and the reserves to be able to deal with it. And a great way to build this is to reflect on what you've been through in the past and have a look at and go, wow, everybody listening to this will have been through change, and you'll be able to look at it and say, goodness, at the time that was really horrendous and I came through it and I'm on the other side of it. And if I can navigate through, let's come back to the divorce example, if I can navigate through a divorce, most people don't want to navigate through a divorce more than once. Me, definitely for certain with that one. It was not, I got divorced a long time ago, but it was an unpleasant experience. But I came out the other side of it. And I managed to deal with lawyers. I managed to deal with an incredibly difficult ex-husband. And I got through that. And I have a look at, and if I reflect back on that, I think, gosh, that was a lot. And I came through that. So knowing you've come through change once or twice before will give you the confidence to know that when it happens again, because it will, that's the nature of life, you have the skills, the emotional resilience and the skills to cope with it. And sometimes we just need to have a reflect back on what we've been through before to know that we can confidently go through something again. When we feel more confident about the prospect of change because we've got through it already, we fear it less. And I think that's a big piece, is we often resist change because we're afraid of how it's going to make us feel. We're afraid we're not going to be able to cope with it. And actually, you have coped with change before. You have been through change before. And I think we often underestimate how skilled we are at navigating life. And also supporting other people to navigate through change and navigate through life. I invite you, as I bring this podcast episode to a close, to sit and reflect on what change you've been through in your life before. And I'd like you to sit and ask yourself, there's 2 questions that are really useful. What were the wins you got from that change? And what did you learn? And how did you grow as a person? Because often our skills that we inadvertently develop through a personal life change are skills we can apply everywhere in our lives. And the more confident you feel, and like I've said, the more confident you feel in your ability to cope when things adjust and change, the less you will feel afraid of upcoming change. I talked in episode 1 about anxiety, and when we allow fear and anxiety about possible future events to rule our lives because we're worrying all the time about what might happen, we take ourselves out of the present and we don't enjoy life. And I firmly believe it is a gift to be in this human existence, and it's totally possible to be enjoying life and to be able to be present and to be able to connect with the people we have and in our lives, and to be able to actually enjoy what's happening moment to moment. When we come out of fear, we're able to do that far more effectively. So I'll leave you with that. And if you would like to get in touch with me, I would love to actually get a gauge for what changes have happened and what you've learned from them. So if you are happy to share, please do pop me a DM on Instagram. It's at Emma O'Brien Coach. I would love to continue the conversation. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.